Good morning, everybody. Happy to have you here. My name is Amy Doherty. I'm with the Minnesota State High School League, running boys and girls tennis, as well as a number of other things. I also have my assistant Shannon Foreman here and colleagues Laura McIntoon and Tim Layton. We have a couple of our site hosts here as well. And this meeting is being recorded, so if you have a math class behind you and you need to step away or watch this again later, feel free. First of all, congratulations on qualifying for the 2024 Girls State Tournament. Sounds like we had a lot of awesome section competitions. Here's our agenda for today's meeting. First, congratulations, which I just said to you. If you have questions, you can put them in chat. We have people muted for right now, just, so we don't get dogs and stuff in the background. If you have really questions that are really just specific to you or your team, you can certainly stick around at the end. Once people leave, we can unmute people and you can ask your individual questions. I won't be able to monitor the questions a ton while I'm talking, but Shannon will be able to look at them. And I know we have a number of very experienced people who might just be able to pop in and answer the questions too. Otherwise, we'll take a look at them as we can. We'll talk about the participating school guide, some venue access information, logistics, a reminder of just some relevant rules and bylaws. We'll talk about how the seating process went, ticketing and media, and that is not in the order we're going to cover this, but all those things will be covered here. However, not everything will be covered here. It's your job as coaches and ADs to review the participating school guide, because that is where just about everything is. You should review the tennis rules and policies. There are a few things in there that maybe have not come up for you during the season, and it's good to have those fresh in your head. You should review USTA Friends at Court Code. And all of those are posted to the ADs and coaches dashboards. And one reminder we always give, the reminder to review those is not just for first timers. Sometimes coaches who've been, coaching for 30 years still remember some rule from 10 years ago. So even if you've been there a lot of times, please review those documents. And now let's talk about where to find those documents. I think, Laura, I think you're here. Do you want to chime in on this part?
Absolutely, Amy, and congratulations everyone on your state tournament berths. The slide you're looking at right now is aimed for ADs and coaches, and this is where you will find state tournament specific information for your roles as a coach or AD. Once you have logged into your coach or AD dashboard, you will see a big blue band like number 1. Clicking on those words sports and activities takes you to one or more blue bands, depending on how many sports you coach or have at your school, like number 2. Find that band that says tennis, girls, and click the little plus mark to open that band up over on the far right. That takes you to number 3. And the spot you're looking for is that spot way over on the right of number 3, where it says State Tournament Resources. That is where Shannon, Amy, and others in our office are putting all of those documents, links, this video will be linked there, etc., to things that you need to have a successful state tournament participation. Again, this is for coaches and ADs once you have logged into your dashboard. The next slide shows the public side of the website, no login required. And this is where you want to send your spectators and fans. At the page for girls tennis, you can get there either by going up underneath sports and activities and picking tennis girls, or there's a shortened URL down at the very bottom, which is just /girls tennis. That's where you're going to find those blue buttons over on the right side underneath state tournament information. And that is all of that information for both you and your spectators. Those blue buttons over on the right side will continue to grow as we get toward the tournament. And you'll see in the bulleted items there some of the things that you'll find those blue buttons linking to. The next slide is a reminder about our state tournament programs. Our state tournament programs are online only. Please work with your spectators to make sure that they are aware of this. They can be viewed, printed, bookmarked, whatever works for the folks who are trying to use those. And again, those are linked on our girls tennis page. And we also have a page that's just /programs where you can view all of the state tournament programs in one place. Apparel will be on site Tuesday all day at both sites, as well as Wednesday and Thursday mornings. We do encourage you to purchase early for best selection. Signature Concepts does a great job of trying to have enough there online, and they've been with us now for a few years, so have some good numbers, but we never quite know what that hot item or hot size might be. So always encourage people to purchase on those first days. Apparel can also be purchased online after the tournament, and it does include a shipping fee, but that is out there until the following week after the tournament. Both tennis sites do require tickets for spectator entrance. All tickets can be linked from up on the top of the website, the ticket tab. Prices are $13 for adult, $8 for students. And our two ticketing sites do use different ticketing vendors. So Class 2A at the U uses the U's proprietary ticketing. Class A uses the league's GoFan ticketing. Just a note to Class A folks, this is a different ticketing vendor than the league has used in the past. We are excited about our partnership with them for a number of things. The ease of buying tickets is several clicks less than Hometown was when we used them. But one important change with GoFan is that, like most other ticketing vendors, they do not allow you to have a screenshot or a printed ticket for admission. That ticket, just like again at almost every other ticketing vendor, does need to be shown on that smartphone for entry at the gate. Moving ahead, streaming. The state tennis meet will be streamed on Friday. Individual semifinals and championships in both classes will be streamed by NSPN. So again, making sure your community knows that that is an option if you have any participants that are still competing on that Friday date. And moving ahead, I'm going to turn it to Tim Layton to talk a little bit about media.
Very good. Thank you, Laura, and welcome to everybody, and congratulations on qualifying for the tennis state tournament. What a terrific place to be for you and your team and your community to be participating in this terrific event. The Minnesota State High School League offers an experiential learning program, which is the school and student media piece that is available for the team portion of the tennis state tournament, but not the individual. So if you have students that are interested there, just remind them that it's for the team tournament, but not the individual part. All applications or credentials for the student media program need to flow through the AD's office. The AD or the designee has to apply for the credential and then approve for those individuals. All of that has to flow through the administrative office of the member school. The media information for those that have not applied for student media before can be found on the media page. On the main page, first of all, go to Who Are You and then click on media. The deadline to do that is 7 o'clock the night before day one of the tournament. And just a reminder that the league will have contracted photographers on site on championship days so that we can just capture the action and the award ceremony, and just those things, all those images that make this just a terrific event. And after the conclusion of the event, you can review those galleries at the Smug Mug link, which is listed down below. Best wishes again to all and safe travels to the Twin Cities. Amy, back to you.
Thanks, Laura and Tim. Good information. And I always learn something when you're giving that presentation, despite the fact I am here full-time looking at the website full-time. We published the, I probably shouldn't say this because if you haven't seen them yet, you're going to get distracted and go to it right now. But as many of you saw, the brackets were published this morning for both A and AA team and A and AA individuals, which includes singles and doubles. The seating team is made up of individuals from the Minnesota Tennis Coaches Association. And they did a remarkable job yesterday afternoon. They really came in prepared. A lot of them were flipping through, pieces and pieces of paper with all these statistics, and they all made a lot of notes. So I think seating went really well. There's always, there's going to be a player who you think should have gotten a seed and they didn't take one of those top 5 spots. Maybe they would have been 6th if we seeded that far. But just know that committee does work really hard on that. If you'd like to review that process, you can find that posted. And just so you know a little bit, once seated, the top 5 are placed into the bracket. Shannon, will you go back one slide again? Thanks. The top 5 are placed into the bracket. So those 5 seated positions are already carved out. And then for singles and doubles, the remaining section winners are placed into the bracket by draw. And they get what I consider the top part of a bracket. When you're looking at 2 players, one's going to be on the top. So they get those positions. And then the remaining section runners up are picked by lottery. The last 5 are randomly selected to play the 1 through 5 seeds. And one thing that always comes up, although not too many times this year, there could be individual qualifiers from the same section. I know that's not ideal, but that happens or can happen when 2 players from the same section are in the top 5. So both the winner and the second place finisher from a section could be in the top 5. And then when they're put into that bracket, they might be put into the same half of the bracket, which would mean there's another section that would have to have 2 players in the other half. So that's how that unfolds. You can certainly talk to some of your fellow coaches, or I can let you know who's on the seating committee if you have more questions about how that works. But just note they did work really hard at it, and it's always interesting to hear what they have to say. All right, Shannon, you can move ahead now. I have one slide here specifically about Class A, and then I have 2 for Double A. So for the Class A venue, Eric will be the site manager and Joe and Nancy will be assisting there. And I think Eric's on the call. If he has anything to add, Eric, will give you a moment after I finish this slide if you have anything to add. Just a note, the vehicle parking there, if you have been there, you're aware of this. If not, just know there is a parking lot, but I think the lines must have been drawn in I don't know, some other era, because if you have a big truck or a big SUV, you're going to have a heck of a time in that lot. So just know that ahead of time. There are limited spots in the lot, but there are also spots on the street for you. If I get there midday, I usually just end up on the street. Just a reminder not to leave visible items in your vehicle. Those of us who live right in the city are in that habit, but we know in the Class A community particularly, some of you aren't in the habit. Fortunately, you're not worried about car thefts in your communities, but you don't want to leave, backpacks, purses, suitcases, things just out to tempt people. Usually there is a park police officer wandering around, but just a heads up and a reminder for you. You'll enter through the main entrance there at the Reed Sweat Inner City Tennis. And then once you walk in, you'll turn left and you'll see this table that I have in this picture. And that is where you and your team will go to check in. And you'll get wristbands, and we'll talk about that in some future slides. Eric, is there anything specific to your venue that you think I need to add?
No, I think you did a good job of covering it. Are you going to go over third coach wristbands?
Yes.
And
Yep.
okay, perfect. Then
Yep.
we should be good.
All right. So that's Eric. That's the person one of the people you can look for when you're at that Class A tournament. All right. And Double A is at Baseline at the University of Minnesota. Rick is the official site manager. Kua and Brandon are his assistants, although I think Rick likes to just say that, I think at both sites, any of those 3 people really pitch in at any of the jobs. So Rick, Kua, and Brandon will be there at Baseline. There are some parking ramps. And there's also some meters, but if you use the meters, just make sure you check, how long you can be parked there. There's a note about the bus parking there if you happen to be taking a bus that's dropping kids off and plans on staying, although I know with the bus shortage, that happens less and less. The entrance for both spectators and teams is right on the 4th Street entrance. And you'll get wristbands there as well, which I'll talk about in the future here. Let's flip to the next slide. I just have a couple things that are really specific for this venue. First of all, at this venue, you can't bring outside food or beverage. And I know that frustrates people. But here's what happens. We run a lot of tournaments at the University of Minnesota. When you run an event at the University of Minnesota, they have the right of first refusal to have concessions or not. If they choose to have concessions, that means people can't bring their, they can't bring their buffet lunch set up, can't bring your Caribou coffee in the morning. I hate to tell you, but that's just part of the University of Minnesota all around policy. So they will have concessions. Now, we also hear that doesn't satisfy everybody's needs, but we keep requesting that they have more and more as they're able. And there are also a number of places within walking distance. I'm going to just say this one sentence, but I'm not going to explain further. They typically don't check students' bags, student participants' bags. So every once in a while I see, a student who might be eating a granola bar that's not served at the concession stand. That's all I'm going to say about that. Just a reminder, this went great last spring. When you walk in there at Baseline, when you walk in, there's this narrow pathway, and you'll take that narrow pathway and then go right into the tournament headquarters. You'll see it because it's glassed in, and that's where they'll hang all the posters and brackets. But that pathway is pretty narrow. That pathway is not a good place for students to leave their bags. Some got in the habit of that years ago, but if they start leaving bags there, there's just no way for spectators to pass. So I hesitate to even say this. I think player bags should be kept on them if they're really concerned about what's inside. However, they've gotten into a better habit about leaving them on the lower level against the wall. I will say that, but I will also say they're not secure there. But at least they're not in people's way right there if they're against the wall like they are in that picture. Now, every time I go, I walk by and I'm seeing like phones and wallets literally just laying there on top of the bags. I think we should probably get out of that habit. It just, why tempt anyone, right? So those are a couple of things that are specific to that venue, and I'll still talk about wristbands, etc. Rick, it looks like you're here. Do you have anything to add about your site specifically?
Good job on the bags and especially zipping up. It was pretty scary last year seeing all the stuff, the valuable stuff laying out. So just please remind the girls about taking care of their stuff. The one thing I want to point out, because some people forget, we have meetings at 15 minutes before every round, and we'll typically meet on court 1, but sometimes we have to be flexible and we might have to move to other areas pending on what's going on with the current match. So just always check in with us and see where we're going to be. We'll be hunting you down to get lineups the first couple days. And then coaches, remember to please check in with us in the tournament office so that we know that you are present and we can get your lineups. That's about it for now.
And that reminds me one thing specific about Class A in terms of court use. Very often the award ceremonies or the meeting is right when you walk in, right on that first court. But depending on matches, sometimes it does get moved to the other side. And when that happens, usually we're just kind of out and about running around communicating, hey, we're moving to the other side. But just something to note in terms of having to shift a little bit based on based on matches. I hear there were a couple marathon matches during sections. Hopefully we won't repeat that, but who knows? Okay, moving on. So that's site-specific information. Team tournament. This is for the team. So for on Tuesday and Wednesday, both sites. Your official squad is made up of up to 15 players based on your rank, order, and your alternates. 2 coaches are official. So if you have 2 coaches listed who have met the general and sports-specific rules requirements and the CERs, you'll get 2 wristbands. If you have a third coach, at that table, will be the table at Class A and the office at AA. You can pick up your third coach could pick up a wristband. Both sites have a list of everybody, all the tennis coaches who have completed their CERs and their rules modules. So if somebody hasn't completed those, they don't even need to go in and ask for it, because those are the people who are actually allowed to coach. And that's just liability. And really that should have been happening all year. If it hasn't been happening all year, that just so you know, that could be a huge liability issue for your school. So that would be up to 3, 2 or 3 coaches for that team tournament. Any additional must purchase tickets. And please communicate this with them, because some of you have 7 coaches and they just all think they're getting in free, and then they get mad at us because it hadn't been communicated to them. 0 student managers are allowed in free and allowed court access. That does not mean they can't purchase a spectator ticket and be doing their duties from the spectator section. And then still talking about Tuesday and Wednesday for the team tournament. For individuals who have not qualified as part of a team, but just qualified in singles or doubles, they do have free admittance to both sites on those Tuesday and Wednesday, actually throughout the tournament. But if they want to go early to watch the team, they just need to check in with that MSHSL table. They can bop back and forth between both sites. They're part of the tournament, even if they're not playing on those first 2 days. And they would sit in the spectator section seating. And I think Rick has a thought.
This happened in the boys where somebody from Class A bopped over before they checked into Class A and they wanted to get in. Even though we know people, we have to follow the procedures and guidelines. So if you're playing at Class A, you got to check in at Class A first to get your stuff before you come over to get in free to AA. Otherwise, you have to pay to get in. And it's same going the other way also. So just be aware of that.
Yeah. Otherwise, anybody could just walk in and say that they are, a certain player. So thanks. And now the next slide will be about the individual tournament. So this would be Thursday, Friday. Once again, 2 coaches can have admittance. The third could be allowed admittance, and on the court, I added as needed. There might be a better chance that they get admittance, but maybe you don't need 3 coaches on the court for 1 player. Maybe you rotate in and out just for space purposes. Once again, those people must have all completed the education requirements and are listed as a coach on your site. And at this point now on Thursday and Friday, there shouldn't be any teammates on the court. So those kids who qualified for Tuesday and Wednesday's competition, they can still get in free on Thursday and Friday. They'll have their wristband. However, they're not going to be on the court anymore. Now they would just need to sit in the spectator seating. Okay, go ahead, Shannon. Coach identification. We already talked about this, but let's do it one more time. You should check in with the MSHSL table at Class A that you saw in the picture, or the office area in AA. I'm going to have to take a picture of their table this year so I can put it in my PowerPoint. And whenever possible, introduce yourself to the USTA officials. If they need to talk to a coach, it's really helpful for them to know who to talk to. And as some of us get older and some coaches get younger, sometimes it's hard for us to differentiate. Is that a coach or is that a player? So if you could wear your school or team apparel, that also really helps the officials, so your school name across your chest. So if they're looking for a certain school, they can see that that coach is from that school. Rick?
I have a question from a coach.
Yeah.
Do players have to wear their wristbands or can it go on their bag?
When they get there, it can go on their bag. But then they kind of have to carry their bag around with them, but it can go on their bag. We know it's less convenient for players. I shouldn't say less convenient, but players don't necessarily want them on their wrist while they're playing. Coaches, you're getting your wristband and you're just keeping it on throughout the week. It won't restrict your movement very much, so you're okay with that. Next slide. A group of students met and created new MSHSL behavior expectations last year. Fortunately, most of these expectations are met above and beyond at tennis, but just important to remember all of these. This sometimes comes up, if your school has a ton of students coming to watch, and a lot of them have never watched tennis before, and they've only watched hockey and basketball and professional sports on TV. They don't necessarily know the etiquette of tennis. So just help remind your non-tennis playing students in particular about the behavior expectations, and the parents too, please. Okay, I'm back to talking about just the team tournament. So speaking of those behavior expectations, we expect that every team will have administration there while their team is playing to supervise their spectators and assist our managers if any need arises. So I think the tickets were already sent out. 4 complimentary tickets were sent to the AD of qualifying teams. So again, that's just the Tuesday and Wednesday teams. And note, I think they did get them for A and AA. Sometimes that confuses them, but it's just easier for us to send them all of them. And the point of those tickets is to have one or more people there to supervise and ensure your spectators are demonstrating proper tennis etiquette. If you have a 4th coach, you could certainly pass one of those tickets along to that person. And again, that is just especially to assist people who don't typically attend tennis matches, or those who do attend tennis matches, but they like to call things from the spectator seating. The spectator should never make any of the calls. No spectator has a part in the match. Make sure your students and parents understand that they can certainly cheer when your school's player does something well, but we shouldn't encourage cheering when there's a fault by the other player. So, and just be visible. ADs, if you could stop in at those tables just to identify yourself to our staff, that would be terrific. All right, moving on, court rental. We know some of you like to actually get on the courts at the venues. If you are a team, you may rent court time through the Monday of the week of the state tournament. So that would be next Monday. And you don't do that through us. I don't even know if they're available. Maybe they're all booked up. But that's just, that is policy. Individuals who are not in team, so those who do not compete until Thursday, may rent court time on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but not on Thursday and Friday. Do note that we have those courts pretty occupied on Tuesday until late, but that is information for you. And again, you'll need to contact the courts directly for that, pay the rental costs for that, etc. Match details. Rick did reference this, but I've added a slide about it to verify, make sure you're all aware. The tournament managers will meet with the coaches and players 15 minutes prior to warm-ups. So unless we fall behind, that would be 15 minutes prior to your official marked match time. And that is required. We communicate important information there, and that is also where your players are introduced to fans. So that is your required report time. Obviously, we'd like you there before that, especially your first time arriving on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, there's a lot of people who might need to check in. So do make sure you arrive plenty early on Thursday as well. We don't want to add any stress to students by getting them there with 1 minute to spare. So do assist and plan ahead. There's always traffic in the Twin Cities, so you can plan on there being traffic, and just get there plenty early. Court assignments may be adjusted to accommodate extended matches. And that's what we reference. The meeting may also be adjusted, and the awards ceremony could be adjusted. Tennis balls will be provided, 3 balls provided each match, more if the matches go long or if needed. And we will have USTA roving officials at each site, at least 3 at each site. And then we have, so that gives us 6 officials, 3 at each site. We actually have secured 7 officials. So we have 1 who could float back and forth as needed. Rick?
I would recommend that if you're having some issues getting there within that, before that 15 minutes, call Eric or I and just give us a heads up and let us know. I mean, it's all about the kids anyway, so we want to work with you, but we just need to have a idea on what's going on.
Yeah, good call. Okay, and then hopefully this won't come up, but this is an FYI that per USTA rule, there can be lateness penalties applied. And again, like Rick said, we want to work with you and the students, so hopefully this won't come up. But, you know, if you and your team decide to make a habit of, you know, skipping the pre-meeting match, which nobody has ever been in the habit of, but we could institute these penalties for lateness. All right, another one more logistics thing. Both sites, yes, Alexa, I think I have the phone numbers on the last slide. I don't, but we'll flip back to it again at the end with the phone numbers. Both sites will have athletic trainers there, and an AED on site. At the Class A tournament, the trainer almost always just sits right there at the end of the MSHSL table. You know, sometimes going back to the back bubble to watch a little bit, but the person is usually pretty easy to find. And at AA, they'll be at the training table right outside the first set of courts or in the office. And Rick can certainly fill you in as we go about where the trainer is if needed.
And we always have radios so we can talk to each other right away.
Yes, yep. It's a little, yeah, at baseline, it's a little harder to see everyone at once, so they can certainly radio if needed. And they have done that before. Bylaws. Oh, so a couple important reminders for you. Of course, all the bylaws and the handbook apply, but these are 2 that may actually come up. Well, any of them could come up, but these are more likely to come up. First of all, a player must be fully eligible to be on the bench or in the playing area. So if you have a player who is not eligible for any reason, poor decision making, etc., they could come in as a spectator, but they would not be part of the team during awards or down on the court. And then one important reminder, since your tournament starts on Tuesday, by law 411 says that there are no organized team activities on Sundays. So you shouldn't have a carbo load, if they even still do carbo loads. You shouldn't do something like that on Sunday. If a few players decide they want to, if they decide they want to go hit with each other on Sunday, that's totally fine, but it should not be something that the coach is organizing or participating in. And that, I think, brings us to our last one.
Hey,
Do we,
Amy, before you
Yeah.
go on, we have a person asking if they can get time at baseline prior to the 8 a.m. matches on individual days.
no, not on individual days. Well, not on either day, I mean, an individual could rent a court at 6 a.m. on Tuesday, but the teams can't.
Well, they're not open at that time. They don't
Yeah.
open up till
Right,
about
yeah.
7
So
or
then,
so.
yeah, so they wouldn't be able to. Eric and Rick, will you state your phone numbers again slowly for people? And I think coaches, they are listed in the participating school guide also, I believe on the very first page. But Eric and Rick, if you'll give us your cell numbers, I'll double check the chat while you're doing that.
I
Okay.
just typed mine into the chat for everybody.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
And I'm gonna do the same, but mine is 763-242-1451.
I see John Anderson asked a question, just curiosity if there's discussion to seat everyone in the future. It has not come up to me. If your tennis advisory decides to put that proposal forward, that's certainly something that coaches can discuss among yourselves. Oh, and one other thing, as you know, girls tennis is going to 3 classes next year. We have not secured a site yet, but Rick and I have been communicating and touring that Lifetime in Bloomington, which is what the tennis advisory proposed as their preferred site. And one of the discussions when Rick and I were there touring, they started talking about which courts would we use, where would we put the spectators, which court would be the bleacher court, etc. And I kind of cut them off because at one point I'm like, what all I need to do is right now is make sure we have a site and make sure we can afford the site. All the details can be worked out later. But if you have a lot of familiarity with that site and you have strong opinions, you can certainly express those to tennis advisory. But you could also just stop by the tables at either of those sites and chat about it a little bit with Rick and Eric. Sorry, Eric, I hadn't warned you about that, but just collecting information from your community. We're open to anything.
Amy, can I touch on registration quick?
Yeah.
So the teams, just when you arrive, Eric and Rick had talked about stopping into the office. Once you come in, team participants will have an envelope that's there that are going to have all of your wristbands in it, as well as your bag tags. If you are participating in the team tournament and also have individuals in the individual tournament, you will not have 2 envelopes to pick up. So you will not get double wristbands or anything like that. So this year, the teams and the coaches, so all players, individuals included, will have an orange wristband. As Amy had mentioned, it is preferred to put that on your bag just so that you don't have to wear it on your wrist.
For the kids.
For the kids.
For the players.
Yep. So coaches do have to have it on their wrist as well. And it's good for all 4 days that you are there to come in and out. That third coach that needs to check into the office, there is a printed out CER report that is in each of the tournament managers' binders. So as Amy mentioned, make sure ADs and coaches, all your CERs are done, or you will not be getting that wristband when you check in.
And that wristband is really helpful for us as management staff to know who the coaches are and being out in the back of the bubble. Because if somebody doesn't have a wristband on, we're going to ask them to leave. So just kind of know that. Also, Amy, we have a question from a coach wondering if they can book the outside courts at any time. And that goes through the University of Minnesota, right? And
Yep.
So you can take care of that on your own. You just can't show up and go out there. You have to set it up with the U.
Yes, and we haven't paid for that either. So a lot of times people think, well, we should just have, the MSHSL should just pay for them so we can all go hit out there. There's not a similar opportunity for Class A. So we just think of that as a separate court and you can go through the U, but that's not actually part of the tournament courts. Shannon, thank you for adding that part about the packets. I kind of skipped over that very first step about picking up that packet. And let me add to what Shannon just said. For those of you who only have a player playing in individuals, if you do come on Tuesday or Wednesday, be sure to stop by your table. You can pick up your packet then, not just get your wristband, but you can pick up your packet too. And Jose, the seating meeting was yesterday. It is limited to a small group of coaches from the Minnesota Tennis Coaches Association. So it's not a meeting where everybody attends and everybody chimes in. It's just a small committee makes those seating decisions. And those are posted on the bracket at this point.
There, the question you had about where to find the bracket, the easiest spot is where Laura had mentioned earlier. If you go to the MSHSL website, click on sports and activities, girls tennis, there is a blue ribbon button that says brackets. That's directly linked to the tennis reporting site where all of the brackets are entered. So the tournament staff will be updating that as the matches are completed. So that's the best way currently to see it. It is live team and individuals, all the seating, how they were placed in. And then that will be the best spot if you are not on site to locate scores and times.
To chime in on what Shannon just said, we could use the coach's help on getting kids to come up and report the scores right away. It's a little longer place at the U of M with our office being up on top. But I know that there's people who are watching the scores all the time, so it's really important to get the scores up there right away.
And I'm going to add one more thing about the outside courts. I mean, as I said, we have no part of them. But I should just add, for ethical purposes, nobody should think they're going to just rent the outside courts for only their team and not let anybody on it throughout the whole week, because that would just be rude, and then we'd have to change our policies. So, if you have an extremely wealthy parent who just wants to keep all those courts for only your team, that isn't very kind. I don't see any other questions in the chat, but we know there might be people who have individual questions. So once we say goodbye, Shannon and I and Rick and Eric, if they're able, will stick around until everybody is logged off. So if there's a couple people left, you can just kind of wave to us and we can unmute you if you have any other questions. Otherwise, you have our email addresses, our phone numbers. Our goal is to make, especially that first morning, whether it be Tuesday or Thursday, just smooth and anxiety-free for the students. And we expect that all the coaches and all the ADs will work together to make sure it's a great opportunity for all the kids. And remember, it's about all the students, whether they go to your school or somebody else's school. And I will sign off with a final congratulations. And we hope your players are all really excited for next week, because I know that we all are. So thanks for being here.